So today we are going into another topic, and it's called the gut-brain connection and mental health. Have you heard that there's a connection between your intestines and all the bacteria that you've got there? It has an effect on your mind. Have you heard of that? You know, for many years, people, especially those who lived out in the country, who lived out, you know, in the really out of the civilized world, as we would say, they seem to know all these things. But those of us who lived in the modern world somehow didn't see a connection. But this is being proven now with research that is being done. Now, there is a term that has become very popular called the gut microbiome. Have you heard of that? The gut microbiome. So microbiome basically means all the bacteria, all the algae, the fungi, the viruses that live in your intestines, okay? Now, there was a time when we would say that if there is any bacteria, it's bad news, kill them. So we would kill them with antibiotics, we would kill them with sprays and, you know, do all kinds of things to get rid of bacteria. And scientists and doctors have had a difficult time wondering why we have so much of bacteria in our large intestine. You know, all our body, everywhere, our skin, our mouth, our intestines are all covered, populated by bacteria. And we thought that's a bad thing. And so surgeons would sometimes, if a person has problems with constipation or diverticulosis problems, they would chop the large intestine and get rid of it, because we thought no point having that there with all the bacteria that causes the problem. Even appendix, you know, as working as an anesthetist, I would see often the surgeon going in thinking something is wrong. Of course, these were the days before we had easy access to ultrasound and CT scan and so on. It was expensive to do those as well. So the surgeon would clinically make a judgment and cut open the patient and look inside, and nothing wrong that they could find out. So what they would do, they say, oh, well, we've opened the abdomen, let's get rid of the appendix. Yeah, many people have had their appendices removed because we thought it's a useless organ. But you know what you need the appendix for? It's a reservoir for bacteria. So what happens is, if you've had diarrhea or, you know, some sort of infection, we used to give a lot of antibiotics in those days. We do even now, but not that as bad. And what would happen, it'll wipe off all the microbiome, you know, the bacteria, most of it will be killed. And we'll learn soon that the bacteria is necessary for us to digest some of our food. And so when all of that gets ridden off, where do you get new bacteria from? It is from your appendix, okay? So God has in His creation made every you know, possible need of ours taken care of. If we didn't have the appendix, we would land up in a bad trouble where the bad bacteria would grow really fast and take over your intestines, okay? So as I said, bacteria is there all over, all around us, and also on our bodies. Now, our intestine is home to approximately 100 trillion bacteria. Now, how much is 100 trillion? Can you imagine? We can't imagine it. It just goes too far that, you know, we can't make sense of that number. If you were to count your bacteria and you took 1 second to count one bacteria, and let's say you wanted to count 1,000,000, it would take you 12 days non-stop, no sleep, counting them to come to 1,000,000. And if you were to count 1 billion bacteria, it would take you 31 years to count. And remember, we have 100 trillion bacteria, and that will take you 3 million years to count all the bacteria you've got in your intestine. How amazing is that? Yes, how many bacteria is that? And you know, most of the bacteria is in the large intestine that we have. And there are more microbes, or microbiome if you want to interchange that, in a single teaspoon of intestinal content. So 1 teaspoon, how little is that? If you take 1 teaspoon of your intestinal content, there'll be more bacteria there than there are stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Have you looked up at the Milky Way? Yeah, you can see that in Masterton when you go out of the town, perhaps. So are they our friend or are they enemies? Yeah, recent research that's coming through the past 10, 15 years is telling us that these bacteria actually are our friends. And this is a picture I got out from these lab called Sonnenberg Lab. They've got a few lovely articles there. If you feel like reading that up, just Google Sonnenberg Labs. And this picture especially, if you look at that, you find a green something in the middle, and on one side of that you've got those blue stuff. Those blue layer that you see is actually the layer of your intestine. Okay, those are the cells of your intestine. And then you have the red and yellow and pink colored bacteria that's sitting there. That green layer that you see is the layer called of mucus. You know, mucus, you have phlegm and so on, similar stuff. And it helps to protect the intestinal layer from the bacteria. Now, they are our friends, but if they come too close, it's not a good idea. You need to keep them at a respectable distance, okay? And we find that each one of us have our own individual mix of bacteria. There's so many kinds of bacteria, and we all have different proportions of some of these bacteria. Some of us don't have a good variety of bacteria, which is not a good thing to be in, situation to be in. We find that these bacteria, we have about 10 times more of them than our own body cells. So you may ask whether you are a parasite on these bacteria or the bacteria is living on you. And there are about more than 1,000 different known bacteria species that is found in the human gut. So there's a diversity of microbes, and we won't get into those details. It's quite interesting, but we just don't have that time today. So what does the gut microbiota do for us? It helps in digesting or fermenting the dietary fiber. You know about fiber, don't you? We talk a lot about fiber and how much we need to eat fiber. Now, where do you find fiber? Is it there in dairy products? No. Do you find fiber in animal meat? No. Eggs? No. Anything that comes from animals, there is no fiber. You want fiber, you have to take unrefined plant-based foods. Okay? So you can't have white bread. It doesn't have fiber much in it. You need to have brown bread. You need to have rice. You don't use white rice. You use brown rice, okay? So that is very important. If anything you remember from today's talk, don't forget the word fiber. It is a fiber that gives food to these microbiome in your gut. And if they don't get food, if they don't have fiber, you know what they do? They attack that green layer. Remember, I just showed you the green layer of mucus? Here we are. It attacks that, and slowly the mucus layer starts getting smaller, and the bacteria starts coming closer and closer to your intestinal wall, which is again not a good idea. And that's why people who have animal products are more prone to intestinal problems. So what these do, the bacteria, as they work on the fiber, they start producing something called as short-chain fatty acids. Now this is one of the breakdown products of the fiber. And these then also work on other products that are there in your intestine, and it results in production of a lot of chemicals that get absorbed into your intestine. And these chemicals then stimulate or increase the rate of some of the processes that goes on. In your liver, you have gluconeogenesis. What that basically means is production or proper handling of the glucose that comes into your body. So you see, it helps very much for those who are diabetic to have increased fiber in the diet, because then the microbiome can produce a lot of chemicals that helps in regulating your sugar in a better, efficient way. We also have cholesterol metabolism. So we talk a lot about cholesterol when we talk about heart disease, don't we? And if you have more plant-based foods, your cholesterol level will be more in a better place. Same with those who have problems with immune system. You know, there are many people amongst us who have rheumatoid arthritis, or who may have ischemic bowel issues, sorry, not ischemic, but inflammatory bowel disease. They may also have the leaky gut. Have you heard of those kind of terms? Yep, different people use different terms, but the symptoms could be same like those who have this irritable bowel. So, you know, they have pain on and off. It's like a spasmodic pain, comes and goes. Certain foods don't agree with them. Then they may have a nauseated feeling, or they may have problems with diarrhea, constipation, and so on. We find that those who have irritable bowel syndrome, what happens is the intestines don't seem to function in a synchronized way. So you may have two parts of the intestine very close together, going tight and in a spasm. Because of that, the food and the liquid, whatever is there, gets blocked, and that stretches the intestine that's in between these areas, and that causes pain. Yeah. Again, won't get into the details of it, but if you take more fiber, the chances are that your symptoms would improve to a great degree. So in summary of what we've talked so far, the microbiome is really important when we're talking in terms of obesity. The more fiber you take, the slower your glucose levels in your blood rises, because the fiber kind of decreases the rate of absorption. Also, vitamins are really important, and they again come because the microbiome breaks down the fiber and the food products that comes into you. You see, these microbiome are like a middle min. You eat the food, you don't digest everything, you give that job to these microbiome to do. And they then break down important chemicals and hormone-like structures, which then gets into your body, and then it helps you with your regular body functions. We still don't understand too well. Research is still going on, but a lot of interesting facts are coming out. There are correlations in those who are plant-based and those who are, more predominantly animal food-based. We will talk about immune system at some point. Those who have plant-based have better immunity as well. Okay. We will talk about how immune system is regulated by the substrates or the chemicals that are being produced in your gut. So how do we get the microbiome? When we are in the mother's womb, there is no bugs within us. Okay, that's a broad way of defining things, that we don't have any bugs, but that's again under research. But as far as we know at the moment, there are no bugs within us in our mother's womb. And we get the bugs or the bacteria as we come through the birth canal. Okay? There's a purpose why we come through a passage which is full of bacteria, so that the baby gets those bacteria from the mother. Now, what happens when you have cesarean sections? In India, I would be often called to give anesthesia for cesarean sections because it was a mother's choice. Not always because the baby was unwell or there was fetal distress, as we call that. And so what happens to those babies? When they are born, not through the natural way, they don't get the bugs. And so they have problems with their immune system later on in life. We find that these children, research is telling us they have more chances of having asthma problems, inflammatory conditions. They may fall sick more often. So this is again what I was talking to you about. This is a research. If you want to have a check on that, you will find some very interesting facts coming through. Also about breastfeeding. Why do you think we encourage breastfeeding? So that the children, the babies, can get the bugs from their mother. The other ways the baby gets bugs is when we have different ceremonies. Different cultures have different ceremonies when the whole community comes through, and you pass the baby from one person to the other, some kissing them, some hugging them, and they get the bacteria from that as well. And throughout our life, we're getting bacteria. There was a time when we would clean our hands all the time. Of course, now because of COVID, we are doing that. But the problem with that is if you overdo it, and I can't tell you what is doing it over the limits and what is the appropriate amount, we don't know. But if you keep washing your hands all the time, you may get off the COVID bug, but you may also kill some of your own good bacteria. Don't take this from me. Don't tell anyone I'm telling you not to wash your hands. You need to wash your hands, but just be careful that you could land up with other problems if you are obsessed with that. So breastfed children, they do much better, again. This is a great article. If you got a camera, take a picture, check it out on Google. Real good information in there. Basically saying that the gut microbiome needs nutrition, that we need to feed the microbiome. And what we feed has a huge impact on our health, because these microbiome will break down the fiber and what you have eaten and produce chemicals again, which will help with the immune system, which will help with obesity, which will help reduce your sugar fluctuations, and so on. So we need to cultivate a healthy gut. Yeah? You need to eat right, and that is high fiber diet, which is plant-based. So fiber, don't forget this word. Fiber is the magic word, okay? Lots and lots of that. So when you eat a lot of fiber, you have these bacteria in your gut, they flourish. Okay, it's a time of prosperity for them. Like a lush green forest, that's what happens. You have so many types of bacteria that it can do their work a lot more efficiently. And when you don't have fiber, when you don't eat plant-based foods, and a lot of meat comes into your diet, we have these problems like the inflammatory bowel disease, psoriatic arthritis, diabetes, and so on. You know, quite a few of my patients, I'll tell you of one who had eczema. And then he found that, you know, he was taking a lot of these body steroid creams and all that, and he was getting fed up. And I said, try getting off. And by the way, he was taking steroid tablets. Yeah, steroids are good for certain conditions, but they also got a huge amount of adverse effects. Okay, so Prednisone, have you heard of that tablet? So what it does is it lowers your immunity. It makes your skin thin. It takes off the inflammatory part that's going on in your body, but along with that, it also has other side effects like your bones get weaker, you'll end up having, you know, puffiness in the face and around your belly, your muscles get weaker, and you're more prone to infections. So he was taking tablets, and he came to me for the first time, and first thing he said, "Hi doctor, I need my steroid tablets. I take prednisone." And I said, "For what?" "Oh, for my dermatitis." And I said, "For dermatitis, why would you take steroids?" He says, "Because it's horrendous." And I could see it wasn't looking very good, his skin. He would scratch himself to bits, and there'll be secondary infections. It's just miserable. And he was only 30 years old. You know, at the time, he wasn't married, so the relationship was suffering. He was getting depressed. He was getting really, really down. And he was at his wit's end. So somebody gave him steroids once, and he had continued with that. And you could see in him, you know, puffy in the face and overweight, though he said, "I didn't eat too much," but he was hungry all the time. And so I said, "Why don't you try getting off all dairy products and even try to be a plant-based person?" And he looked at me with a quizzical expression. He said, "How would that help?" I said, "Give it a go." He said, "I'll do anything." He was so desperate. So I didn't give him steroids. I gave him a bit more cream, and I said, "Go off dairy." He went home. I didn't see him for 3 months, and I was wondering what's happened. Maybe he's changed his doctor. A crazy doctor told him, "Get off milk and you'll be fine." He came back after 3 months, and the skin was so beautiful. And he said he only uses the moisturizing cream. No more steroids, no more tablet. So I would say majority of cases have issues because of dairy products. When it comes to eczema, psoriasis. So we've got a few psoriatic patients as well who got off their dairy and they did a lot better. A few, minority, may not benefit because they may have other causes for the eczema going on. I've also had patients who have had irritable bowel, and they went off dairy and meat, and they started doing a lot better as well. Yeah. Now, the topic today was also about mental health. How does that help us? So, you know, people say it's genes that causes mental health issues and autoimmune problems. Perhaps there is an element of that, definitely. I won't contradict that. But if you change your microbiome, it can help with your mental health along with your other issues, autoimmune problems. So I'm just showing a few papers to you so that you believe that I'm not telling you all kinds of stories here. Yeah, my own ideas. We don't have time, so I'll quickly go through a few of them. Effects of regulating intestinal microbiota on anxiety symptoms. So they did this study, and they changed the person's diet to plant-based diet, and this is what they found, that through inflammatory mediators, so what these are basically, these are chemicals that our body produces whenever there's an inflammation. You know, like for example, if you have an infection and inflammation are different. Infection is when you have a bacteria involved in it. If there's no bacteria, you have inflammation. Inflammation happens whenever there is infection, okay? So let's say you poked yourself while gardening with a thorn from a rose, and then it starts getting red, it gets hot, it gets painful, it gets swollen. Yeah? So that's an inflammation going on because bacteria has got into your skin. So for that to happen, you have these chemicals that our body releases. We have soldier cells. Did I talk to you about soldier cells at any time? Well, you'll hear me say that perhaps next week. So what happens then is our body produces the chemicals to fight the bacteria that comes into our system, okay? And if you are plant-based, your immune system is much more efficient. Your infection can be fought off a lot better. And what did they find in this treatment? That anxiety symptoms, in addition to the use of psychiatric drugs for treatment, we can also consider regulating intestinal flora to alleviate anxiety symptoms. What they're basically saying is someone's got anxiety problems. The pill is not the only solution. And oftentimes the pill doesn't work. I'm not telling you don't take the pills your GP is giving you, okay? Continue with that, but make changes in your lifestyle. And you will find that your mood will rise. Your anxiety levels will be a lot more, settled. And why? It's because your microbiome is giving those chemicals which reach your brain. And it helps you stay calmer and a lot more collected. This one had 26 articles that were selected, and it went through them in a systematic way. And again, this says that gut microbiome has an effect on your depression and mood. What they're finding now, they're saying that perhaps the treatment from pills, we have to move on to actually giving people new gut bacteria. Okay, so it's a transplant. Just like you can transplant lungs and liver, you can transplant the bacteria from a healthy person into a person who's having trouble with the mood and anxiety issues. Very promising things in future, and we hope that it'll be diet that's going to make a difference in people's lifestyle. Do you know, even for autism, people are saying, doctors are thinking, perhaps certain children have issues like autism spectrum disorder, ADHD. Do you know how many kids have those problems? I get tired writing scripts after scripts for kids who keep taking these pills so that they can be calmer, they can be a bit more, less active, if I can put it that way. And I know people who have been through this, when they become older, they're off that, they say, I hated it. It ruined my life. I didn't want to do anything. I just sat there like a zombie. And basically that's what we are doing. We're kind of, keeping them calm with the tablets. How much better would it be if we feed our children the right diet? Not KFC and potato chips and, those kind of diet, but plant-based diet, fruits and nuts and grains. This is the last one. I'll tell you again, same thing. The role of inflammation and the gut microbiome in depression and anxiety. The same research coming through repeatedly. So if you're having trouble with your mood and anxiety issues, I will suggest give it a go for a month, just 4 weeks. Get rid of all the animal food that you take normally. Yeah. If you're not ready for that, don't do it in a rush. Keep coming here, you'll learn some good recipes, you can then be prepared. There's nothing worse than jumping into becoming plant-based without knowing what to do. Okay? If you're having trouble, go into internet, there are lots of sites you can go in. Just put in plant-based foods, recipes. You'll get lots of recipes come through. So we hope one day in this church you can come in again and we could have some program called the Anxiety Depression Recovery Program. We haven't set dates for that, and I don't know how it will be conducted, but we hope that the church here, the elders here, would think about that. And if that happens, it's a really nice program where you can learn more about lifestyle and changes. Now, we talked about your physical health, we talked about your mental health. How about your spiritual health? Did you know that that's a vital part of our well-being? Do you know, among the Maori people, and I've got some very good friends among the Maori population and in Invercargill, some of them are patients, and they tell me that for them, they have these 4 pillars or 4 walls in their house. In terms, their concepts and principles that health includes physical health, mental health, social health, and spiritual health. And there's a lot of truth in that. You know, in our culture, especially the Western culture, we have, you know, given up on the spiritual aspects of it. There is no God. I won't argue with that with you today. And there is, you know, no higher power. And no one's interested. We live lives here and then we fade away. We become manure and that's the end of it. But there's more to it. I will again encourage you to look into the spiritual aspects of your health. And you will find there's a lot more out there that we have to know, that we can know. How much do we know? If I could fit in all our, you know, understanding and knowledge in this room, what percentage of the room could get filled? 10%, 20%, 50%? There'll still be a lot that we don't know anything about. Would that be true? Let us make efforts to find out if there's something beyond that we don't know, which will give us a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging, which will give us peace, and which will enhance our physical health as well. Thank you. It was lovely talking to you.